Mais à partir d'un moment, il y a un déclic. Et je commence à comprendre qu'ils conditionnent nos cerveaux pour accepter ce qu'eux ils veulent. C'est leur narratif qu'ils veulent qu'on apprenne. Et depuis ce temps, moi je commence à faire la part des choses et j'ai compris que c'est très dangereux ce qu'ils font. Et aujourd'hui, plus que jamais, je me rends compte qu'ils ont conditionné l'esprit.
Luxembourg just sent an ambassador to a revolutionary African military leader, Traoré. But why would a tiny European nation deepen ties with a government the West is quietly backing away from? Let's find out. It happened with no press frenzy, no blaring headlines, and no dramatic speeches. But for those who watched the quiet movements of power, June 26, 2025, marked something far bigger than protocol. Inside the presidential palace of Burkina Faso, Laure Huberty, a seasoned diplomat from the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, presented her credentials to Captain Ibrahim Traoré. The moment was brief, the coverage minimal, but the implications massive. This was no routine diplomatic shuffle. It was a deliberate statement, spoken in the language of silence. As the West recalibrates its influence across Africa, often frantically, Luxembourg has chosen a different approach. While larger nations scale down their involvement or retreat entirely from the Sahel, Luxembourg is stepping closer. Not with military deployments or conditional aid, but with something far less visible and potentially more effective: consistency. In appointing Laure Huberty as Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary to Burkina Faso, Luxembourg has made it clear that it sees value in being present, stable, and engaged, even as the political winds shift. Huberty's posting is unique not just because of its timing, but because of the circumstances in which it occurs. Burkina Faso, now governed by a military transition under Traoré, has rejected conventional partnerships and turned a cold shoulder to former colonial powers. The country's foreign policy is undergoing a bold reconfiguration, one that emphasizes sovereignty, regional solidarity, and self-defined development models. In this environment, most Western nations are keeping their distance. Luxembourg, instead, is leaning in. What makes this move even more significant is how unceremonious it was. There was no media blitz, no diplomatic fanfare. The act was simple, but in that simplicity lay strength. No ultimatums, no veiled critiques about governance, no lecture on values. Just an experienced envoy sent by a country that has been quietly collaborating with Burkina Faso for decades. It is exactly this lack of noise that makes the move feel intentional. Luxembourg is not chasing influence, it is maintaining trust. Laure Huberty is not new to complex environments. Her career has been marked by deep experience in development cooperation and multilateral dialogue. She was not sent to deliver instructions, she was sent to listen, to stabilize, and to signal continuity. Her base may be in Dakar, but her mandate is clear: remain embedded in Burkina Faso's transformation and strengthen the foundation of a relationship that has outlasted political changes, leadership transitions, and regional instability. This appointment carries more than a message of goodwill. It carries the weight of strategic patience. At a time when many external powers are being pushed out or challenged, Luxembourg is one of the few still invited in. That says more than any statement could. It reflects a kind of diplomacy that isn't built on spectacle, but on staying power. Burkina Faso is no longer the country it was even 5 years ago, and Luxembourg isn't trying to pretend it is. By sending Huberty, it's signaling that it understands the new terrain, respects the shift, and still wants to be part of the journey. But this wasn't a spontaneous decision. It rests on something far older and more durable than headlines. Behind this appointment is a relationship nearly 3 decades in the making, shaped not by power, but by partnership. To understand why this single diplomatic move carries such weight, we have to go back to the beginning of this alliance, to the promises kept in silence, and to the kind of cooperation that rarely makes front-page news, but builds something far more important: trust. Let's pause for a second to say big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. Long before revolutions reshaped West Africa, before the rise of Ibrahim Traoré, or the decline of French influence in the Sahel, there was another story quietly unfolding. It didn't involve troops, sanctions, or international headlines. It was the story of a small European country building a long-term, low-profile alliance with one of the poorest nations in the world, with no fanfare, no press, and no colonial guilt driving the agenda. In 1996, Luxembourg initiated its first steps into Burkina Faso's development landscape. But it was in 1998 that the decision became official. Burkina Faso was designated as a priority partner for Luxembourg's development cooperation. It was an unusual pairing on paper, a global financial hub best known for its banks and private wealth, reaching across the Mediterranean to partner with a landlocked country battling extreme poverty, low literacy rates, and crumbling infrastructure. Yet the match proved resilient. Luxembourg never arrived with arrogance or conditions. Unlike traditional donors, it didn't demand alignment with geopolitical interests or impose governance models. It offered something different: dependable partnership, technical assistance, and financial support anchored in mutual respect. In the world of aid, where relationships often feel extractive or conditional, this was a rare thing. And over the decades, that quiet approach began to yield results. One of the clearest signs of this deepening relationship was the creation of the Indicative Cooperation Programs (PICs), multi-year, jointly agreed frameworks that set the course for where aid would go, how it would be spent, and what outcomes were expected. These were not just pledges, they were roadmaps built together, updated through constant dialogue and joint evaluations. The third such program, known as ICP3, ran from 2016 to 2022 and saw 120 million euros mobilized, a massive commitment from a country of Luxembourg's size. But it wasn't the amount that stood out, it was the focus: education, health, inclusive finance, job creation, digitalization, emergency support. It was targeted, practical, and aligned with Burkina Faso's development priorities, not those of its donors. This approach built something more valuable than infrastructure. It built trust. And that trust became the foundation for a relationship that managed to survive political upheaval, leadership transitions, and even the rise of military governance. When other partners hesitated, Luxembourg adjusted. When others cut ties or paused operations, Luxembourg adapted its methods without abandoning its presence. Even when Burkina Faso expelled French troops and cut off major diplomatic links with former colonial powers, Luxembourg was not viewed through the same lens. It had earned a different reputation, not of interference, but of quiet, sustained commitment. It wasn't in the business of dictating political paths. It was investing in outcomes. That's why, when Laure Huberty arrived in 2025, she didn't come into a vacuum. She came into a space that had been cultivated for years, one where cooperation was not seen as a threat, but as a continuation of something deeply familiar. Her presence is not a beginning, it's a confirmation. A sign that even in the new political era of Burkina Faso, some relationships are too foundational to break. But this relationship hasn't just endured, it has evolved. Luxembourg's focus has shifted with the needs of the country, from basic infrastructure to modern governance tools, from education access to digital transformation. It has remained flexible without being aimless. It's one of the few examples in Africa where a European nation's development partnership has matured without collapsing under the weight of changing politics or donor fatigue. And now, with Burkina Faso asserting its autonomy more forcefully than ever, Luxembourg's investment is entering a new phase, one where diplomacy and development are no longer separate. Laure Huberty will not just be overseeing aid projects, she will be navigating a geopolitical landscape in which every partnership is being tested for its authenticity. The next question, then, is what Luxembourg is doing on the ground. What makes its development model so different? And how is it managing to stay effective while others are losing ground? If trust is the currency of diplomacy, then Luxembourg has been quietly investing in Burkina Faso for years, and the dividends are now beginning to show. But this isn't just about symbolism or history. What makes this relationship so unique today is how Luxembourg's work looks and feels on the ground, and why it hasn't triggered the resistance or backlash now facing larger Western actors. While many international donors have focused on high-profile infrastructure or fragile political reforms, Luxembourg has consistently stayed embedded in the foundations of human development. Its projects aren't splashy, but they are surgical, designed to empower systems that matter most to ordinary Burkina Faso citizens. Take education. While other donors have cycled in and out depending on political stability, Luxembourg has remained a central player in Burkina Faso's education strategy, not just by funding it, but by co-designing it. Over the years, it has contributed to curriculum development, teacher training, access to rural schools, and performance monitoring systems that help track student outcomes. It doesn't just build classrooms, it helps build a sustainable national education system that can outlast any government or donor cycle. This is not top-down charity. It's institutional reinforcement, made with long-term vision. Then there's the country's slow but vital embrace of digital transformation. While tech giants and multilaterals often push digitalization with commercial motives or aggressive timelines, Luxembourg has taken a slower, more respectful route, supporting the digitization of public services in Burkina Faso in a way that centers local priorities. One of the most impactful projects underway is the modernization of the land registry systems in key cities like Ouagadougou and Bobo-Dioulasso. On the surface, this might seem like dry bureaucratic work. But in a country where land disputes often fuel community tensions, digitizing property records is nothing short of revolutionary. It creates clarity, prevents corruption, and strengthens citizens' ability to claim their rights, especially women and rural farmers who are often excluded from formal systems. And yet, Luxembourg's role doesn't end with long-term development. It has also become a key emergency actor during moments of humanitarian crisis. Whether it was the fallout of COVID-19, rising internal displacement due to conflict, or pressure on the health system from cross-border refugee flows, Luxembourg didn't disappear when the country's challenges escalated. It responded. But even here, its methods stood out. Instead of deploying a surge of external experts, it worked through local NGOs and regional partnerships, ensuring that aid reached communities faster and with less administrative drag. It didn't try to be the hero. It focused on being a partner. This mix, steady development aid paired with flexible humanitarian responsiveness, has made Luxembourg remarkably resilient in a region where donor fatigue and local suspicion are at an all-time high. More importantly, Luxembourg's strategy is relational, not transactional. It doesn't show up only when it wants to influence. It doesn't disappear when things get complicated. It listens, it adapts, it stays. Part of that success comes from the way Luxembourg organizes its cooperation. No rigid checklists, no lectures, no hidden strings. Projects are chosen through joint consultations, based on Burkina Faso's actual needs, not donor headlines. The goal is never control, it's alignment. That alone makes it an outlier in the development world. It is to be noted that Traoré is not letting a nation that might want to control Burkina Faso. By the way, we have launched a merch that honors the African leaders who are taking a stand for Africa. Check them out, to show you also stand with loyal sons of Africa, no matter where you are. Even when funding projects that require external expertise, Luxembourg often insists on embedding Burkina Faso leadership at every level. Whether it's designing a new financial inclusion strategy or digitizing a social registry, local ownership remains the default, not an afterthought. This is what builds legitimacy. This is what builds trust. That's also why Laure Huberty's role extends beyond diplomacy. She's stepping into an ecosystem of projects that already reflect real cooperation, not token aid. And if she succeeds, she won't just protect that legacy, she'll help scale it. But all of this raises a bigger question. In a country that's rapidly transforming its global alliances and rejecting many old partnerships, how is Luxembourg still welcome? How has it avoided the backlash faced by others? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. When foreign embassies scale back, when development agencies are met with suspicion, and when military leaders warn of foreign interference, Luxembourg remains a rare exception. It's not an oversight. It's the result of careful, consistent diplomacy that has resisted the temptations of dominance. There's a growing sentiment across the Sahel, especially in countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, that the West has long treated African nations not as partners, but as projects. whether through military interventions disguised as cooperation or through aid programs loaded with political conditions, the legacy of paternalism has bred deep distrust. France, once the region's dominant actor, has faced mass protests, military expulsions, and complete diplomatic breakdowns. The United States and the European Union, often viewed as distant and inconsistent, haven't fared much better. Luxembourg, however, has taken a completely different path, and its survival in this volatile diplomatic landscape stems from what it never tried to be. It didn't attempt to be a security power. It didn't impose ideological agendas. It never claimed to lead reform. And most importantly, it never acted as if it had the right to redesign Burkina Faso's future. That humility has translated into resilience. While the larger powers often parachuted in with grand strategies and rotating missions, Luxembourg embedded itself. It built its presence slowly, through relationships rather than campaigns. The teams it sent were small, specialized, and cooperative, not command centers, but collaborators. It didn't deliver instructions from afar. It worked from within, respecting Burkina Faso's evolving governance structures, even when those structures shifted from civilian to military leadership. One key reason this approach continues to resonate is that Luxembourg has never politicized its aid. While other donors often suspend funding in response to coups or political changes, Luxembourg has adopted a pragmatic stance. It distinguishes between the state and its people. When leadership changes, its primary concern isn't optics. It's whether ongoing projects will still deliver for those who need them. This has helped Luxembourg remain active during transitions when other partners flee. But perhaps the most significant reason for Luxembourg's continued welcome lies in its ability to understand power without trying to possess it. In West Africa today, sovereignty is not a slogan. It is a daily fight. From reclaiming resource contracts to rejecting foreign military bases, countries like Burkina Faso are asserting their right to define their path. Luxembourg, unlike its peers, doesn't challenge that assertion. It quietly supports it. It offers expertise where needed, but never insists on obedience. And that alone sets it apart. Even the symbolic gestures matter. While some foreign envoys issue statements laced with thinly veiled pressure, Luxembourg speaks through actions. It continues its development projects. It honors previous commitments. It shows up in local forums. It doesn't lecture, it listens. And in an environment where being foreign is itself a liability, that form of diplomacy has become a rare and valuable currency. There's also the scale factor. Luxembourg knows its size. It doesn't try to lead Africa's transformation. It tries to contribute to it. That honesty disarms suspicion and builds credibility. In many ways, it has learned that influence does not always come from being loud. It comes from being present, consistent, and trusted. So when Laure Huberty arrived in Ouagadougou, she wasn't stepping into a vacuum. She was entering a space her country had kept open, not through force, but through continuity. The reason she was welcomed isn't just because she represents Luxembourg. It's because Luxembourg, through years of quiet alignment with Burkina Faso's priorities, had already earned its invitation. Still, the stakes are rising. As the global balance shifts and Burkina Faso carves out a new geopolitical identity, can this relationship continue to thrive without being pulled into the ideological battleground between East and West? The world Burkina Faso now navigates is not the same one that existed when Luxembourg first extended its hand in partnership. Today, the lines are being redrawn, with sharpened edges. Old alliances are unraveling, new ones are forming, and everywhere in between, African nations like Burkina Faso are being pressured to choose sides. East or West, BRICS or NATO, revolution or reform, it's no longer enough to remain open. You're either with someone or against someone. And that's exactly where Luxembourg finds itself. In a balancing act, few countries of its size would dare attempt. So far, Luxembourg has managed to remain in Burkina Faso's good graces by avoiding ideological traps. It hasn't tried to pull the country into Western geopolitical frameworks, and it has never demanded allegiance in return for aid. But the question now is, can that neutrality hold as the stakes grow higher? Burkina Faso is no longer just a development partner. It's become a symbol of resistance to the old global order. Traoré's government has openly defied France, questioned Western media narratives, and embraced a new generation of African sovereignty discourse. It's building ties with Russia, considering cooperation with China, and aligning itself with anti-imperialist rhetoric that casts suspicion on nearly all foreign presence. This puts Luxembourg in a delicate position. It must prove that its presence is not a Trojan horse for Western control, that it doesn't carry the same fingerprints that African nations have learned to distrust. One misstep, one careless policy shift or tone-deaf remark, and decades of goodwill could vanish overnight. Because in this new era, good intentions are not enough. Political awareness is survival. Laure Huberty's mission, then, is more than diplomatic. It is ideological navigation in a minefield of perception. Every project she touches, every forum she attends, every partnership she brokers must reinforce the idea that Luxembourg is not here to extract or dominate. It is here to contribute. And not just to Burkina Faso's development, but to its self-determination. This is where Luxembourg's small size may be its greatest advantage. Unlike the United States, it doesn't have military bases to defend. Unlike France, it doesn't have a colonial history to justify. And unlike China or Russia, it doesn't demand political loyalty in exchange for investment. Luxembourg, in many ways, is believable when it says, "We are just here to help." But this approach will be tested in new ways as the world becomes more polarized. International aid is no longer seen as neutral. Infrastructure, digital systems, and financial tools are all now part of geopolitical competition. Even humanitarian support can be framed as soft power, and Burkina Faso's leadership is increasingly alert to these layers, watching who funds what and why. So how does Luxembourg stay in the game? By doing what it has always done best, staying small, staying smart, and staying silent where others shout. It must keep its footprint light but meaningful. It must ensure its projects are visibly aligned with local goals, not international optics. And it must resist being roped into broader Western strategies that could compromise its independent image. This is not an easy path, but it's a unique one. If Luxembourg succeeds, it will offer a new model for how small states can remain relevant in Africa without acting like empires. It could set a precedent for development partnerships rooted not in leverage but in listening, not in control but in care. For Burkina Faso, the relationship offers more than funding. It offers an example that not all outside actors are here to exploit. And in a world increasingly shaped by suspicion, that kind of partnership is not just rare, it's revolutionary. Laure Huberty's appointment isn't just a continuation of diplomacy. It's a test of whether diplomacy can still mean something honest in an age of performance and pressure. And if she passes that test, it won't be Luxembourg that wins. It will be Africa. Do you think Luxembourg can be trusted? Will Traoré let it control Burkina Faso? Let us know in the comments section. Was that a smart choice? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.